Welcome back to our special coverage end of the year. Earlier, we examined the ongoing turmoil in Syria, a conflict that continues to reshape the region. Now we move to Salma, who will bring us the top stories of the day. To you, Salma.
Thank you, Hela, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at the top stories for this hour. Starting with the latest developments in Gaza, the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has condemned Israel's destruction of Jabalia as a flagrant disregard for international law. It accused Israel of committing genocide, targeting hospitals, and using starvation as a weapon, while forcibly displacing Palestinians amid harsh winter conditions. The ministry also criticized Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank, alleging land annexation under settler expansion. It urged the UN Security Council to take action, citing relevant resolutions and the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. Israeli occupation forces have raided El Isawiyah in occupied East Jerusalem, issuing demolition orders for homes and structures under the pretext of unauthorized construction. Since October 7, 2023, over 433 demolitions have taken place in Jerusalem, including forced self-demolitions to avoid steep fines. Palestinians face systematic denial of building permits, violating international law and their right to housing as part of Israel's efforts to forcibly displace them while expanding settlements in and around the city. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of blocking a detainee exchange deal for political gain. Lapid stated that Netanyahu fears losing support from extremist partners despite the deal being feasible as early as 8 months ago. He criticized the ongoing Gaza war, claiming it no longer serves Israel's security interests, lacks strategic objectives, and results in daily soldiers' casualties. Lapid called for a comprehensive agreement with Hamas after the war.
So yes, in order to make sure that there is a hostage deal, I believe that
The Gaza government's media office has reported that 7 displaced individuals have died from severe cold and freezing temperatures, warning of more fatalities due to the tragic conditions faced by Palestinians. Nearly the entire population has been displaced by Israeli attacks, leaving them in dire conditions. The office condemned Israel's actions, which have caused civilian suffering and the destruction of homes, pushing Palestinians to extreme levels of hardships. Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip climbed to over 45,500 and over 108,300 wounded. Medical reports said that at least 9 Palestinians were killed and dozens of others wounded in an Israeli airstrike in El Maghazi refugee camp in central Gaza Strip. This wraps up our top stories for this hour, and now we move back to our special coverage.
Thank you very much, Salma. Now we turn our attention to Israel, a nation marked by a year of corruption, deceit, and reckless aggression, from political chaos and deep societal divisions to escalating international condemnation. Israel's actions in 2024 have drawn widespread ire. This has been a year of reckoning for Israel. Its far-right government has pursued divisive policies, tearing apart the social fabric and also intensifying its brutal occupation. The expansion of illegal settlements and the atrocities committed during the Gaza war have all exposed Israel's moral and political decline, sparking outrage worldwide. Tonight, we break down this turbulent year, showing how Israel has alienated its allies, deepened internal divisions, and also cemented its reputation as a pariah state.
מתחייב. Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant.
To unpack Israel's internal turmoil, we're now joined by Dr. Ayman Rakab, Professor of Political Science at Al-Quds University. Dr. Rakab, welcome to our special coverage and thank you very much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, how has Netanyahu's corruption trial, coupled with accusations of exploiting the Gaza war, intensified Israel's political instability?
Greetings, everybody. In fact, Netanyahu's corruption, in fact, has been going on even before Al-Aqsa flood happened. It's been 5 years, in fact, that corruption has been facing corruption accusations. And the Israelis, or Netanyahu, through what he called judicial reform, has been trying to impose control over all ruling authorities inside of the Israeli state. And the opposition in Israel considered that some kind of a judicial coup led by Netanyahu. But in fact, when the Al-Aqsa flood on the 7th of October came along, in fact, the political trajectory of Netanyahu and Israel changed. Netanyahu, in fact, and this is what we have found out through the NISS, we have found that the Israeli state is suffering from erosion of its ruling authorities, and we are projecting through our think tank, or we were projecting through our think tank, that Israel is going to target Hezbollah and not really Hamas. But we found that a surprise happened, which was the Al-Aqsa flood, and Netanyahu kept on or started targeting the Gaza Strip and Hamas as a pretext to cover for his corruption issues and accusations. In fact, right now there is as well another judicial predicament in Israel, and Netanyahu keeps on maneuvering and trying to achieve impunity in order to run away from the accusations. And this is what led him to, as I was just saying, carry out what is known in Israel as the judicial coup.
Yes. How has the Supreme Court's ruling on mandatory military service for the ultra-Orthodox Jews affected tensions between Israel's secular and religious communities?
As we mentioned before the 7th of October 2023, in fact, it was perceived that that the Israeli state is going to divide into a religious and a secular one. And right now, it seems that the religious extremist sect is ruling over the government of Israel. In March 2023, there was agreement protocols between Netanyahu and, of course, the representative of the Likud party and Chas and the other religious movements in Israel. Part of the agreement had to do with the enactment of Talmud teachings. like the separation between men and women in public buses and the halting of movement during Saturdays. In fact, I think that what's happening is a neutralization of the Haredim Jews, or the Haredi Jews. In fact, before Knesset went to its summer vacation, we have seen how there was a ruling for the conscription of Haredis, but then the Israeli Justice Court, with its ruling, created ripples and collision inside of the Israeli community. And there was a lot of discords regarding the issuance of a law preventing the conscription of Haredi Jews. And this is something we have all heard of. In fact, there was a discord once more between secular sects and religious sects in Israel. In fact, there was a gentleman agreement with Netanyahu, but it wasn't written. This is something that happened recently in Israel. I believe that the situation until now is characterized by a collision between the deep state of Israel and the religious or the right-wing religious sect that is governing, in fact, inside of Israel. In fact, before that, there wasn't really a huge difference between the right wing and the secular wing inside of Israel in terms of voting college. Mm-hmm. But because of the erosion of or the lack of consolidation between parties, the voting college, electoral college, in fact, ended in favor of the right wing inside of Israel. That is, of course, extremist. Of course, there is a latent conflict right now between the right wing, of course, on top of which is the Likud party, and which could as well sometimes be represented as secular and sometimes religious, and between other secular democratic parties inside of Israel who are in close discord or in continuous discord with the Israeli government.
Dr. Ayman, what are the implications of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's dismissal for Israel's political dynamics and also internal power struggles?
In fact, Gallant, when was dismissed, when the government was trying to dismiss Gallant in September 2023, there were riots in the streets. But right now, something different, in fact, took place. Not Gallant objected to the conscription ruling by Netanyahu, and he comes from a military background, in fact, and he was. And in fact, he caused some challenges, created some challenges for Netanyahu. Yeah. In fact, the Israeli state was at this point waging war on Lebanon, and it was facing some issues regarding its withdrawal from Lebanon and Palestine. But Netanyahu kept on giving promises to the Americans and the Democrats about how he's not going to dismiss any military official in a non-democratic manner. But when we look at the surveys, we find that Netanyahu's stocks are actually on the rise inside of Israel. And this is a grave indicator regarding the ruling regime inside of Israel. In fact, when Netanyahu is called the king in the Israeli media, because he is, in fact, Netanyahu, in fact, has been corrupt in his ways, political ways and judicial ones. And it is, in fact, unfortunate that the more bloodshed is done by Netanyahu, the more popularity he has in the Israeli state. But right now, we can see, based on indicators, that Netanyahu, despite all the corruption accusations, is still ruling over the Israeli state and is still receiving many votes and support. But right now there aren't any indicators for early elections in Israel, and we're going to wait for 2026 for Israel to go through elections, and we're going to see whether Gallant is going to run for the elections. In fact, the New Hope party is going back to its membership of Likud, and this is giving force once more to Netanyahu as the leader of the Likud party, or to become the leader of the Likud party and to stay in power in Israel.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ayman Al-Raqqa, Professor of Political Science at Al-Quds University, for your insightful and comprehensive analysis. We thank you very much. 2024 pushed Israel into unparalleled turmoil, from Netanyahu's corruption trial and deepening societal divisions to the devastation in Gaza and global condemnation over settlement expansion. The nation faced mounting challenges both internally and internationally. Let's delve into the defining moments of a year that left Israel isolated and under intense scrutiny.
Israel is facing a critical moment as internal turmoil deepens, driven by political divisions, government disputes, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ongoing corruption trial. The crisis escalated after the outbreak of the Gaza war on October 7, 2023, which exposed the vulnerabilities in Netanyahu's far-right coalition. Figures like National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich have pushed for aggressive policies, including illegal settlement expansions, exacerbating tensions in Palestinian territories, and further isolating Israel on the global stage. Domestically, disputes over mandatory military service for ultra-Orthodox Jews have added to the unrest. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's dismissal for opposing exemptions exposed deep rifts between secular and religious communities, threatening societal cohesion. Netanyahu's corruption trial, where he faces charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, adds another layer to the crisis. Critics accuse him of using wartime decisions to distract from his legal troubles, intertwining his political survival with the nation's military conflicts. The ongoing Israeli aggression against Gaza and Lebanon has also intensified internal divisions. Arab citizens, making up to 21% of the population, have grown increasingly disillusioned amid inflammatory rhetoric and rising violence fueled by far-right officials. Looking ahead, the growing influence of extremist factions poses a serious threat to Israel's institutions. Continued aggression risks further domestic unrest and could drive many secular Israelis to seek stability abroad. As these crises converge, Israel's future is marked by uncertainty and profound challenges to its societal fabric and global standing.
And now we turn to the international repercussions of Israel's actions. To analyze the legal and diplomatic consequences, we welcome Mr. Majid Boudin, international law expert. Mr. Boudin, thank you very much for being with us here on Q News. Let me begin by asking you about Israel's settlement expansion this year, which has been the largest land seizures in decades, condemned globally as a violation of international law. Now, how do these land grabs undermine international law, and what consequences could Israel face from global bodies or courts?
The behavior of Israel is a threat to international law as a standard governing the relationship and the relations worldwide. After World War II, at least if we take the last stage of the development of international law, if we take the development of the international relations and the creation of the United Nations, we will see that the United Nations has been created on the assumption that international law is the governing law of the behavings of states with what it's containing as forbidden acts and what is assumed as acts allowed to be taken by states. And this corpus of law is the standard to which all nations are referring as the customary law, the conventional law, the treaty law, in fact, as the international rules that they are governing the relationship between nations and between people. And by not obeying to the law, by breaching the law in a continuous way, by having this feeling of impunity, and by sending a message that they can break the law without any sanctions, and that no sanction could be taken against Israel and against its leaders, it's a very strong message which could jeopardize the relationship and the relations worldwide. It's not a matter of Israel only. It's a matter of the peace in the world and how we are going to govern the world. The pressure that they have been exercised on the International Criminal Court, declared by its prosecutor himself, saying that he has been subject to continuous pressure from Israel and some of its allies. And is an interference which nobody can accept and no nation can accept. When we see all these horror in Gaza, in south of Lebanon, in other places, and we see that there is no sanction taken, when we see that the decisions of the International Court of Justice, even the provisional decisions are ignored.
Well, Mr. Majid, you're raising a very important point here. Now, the Gaza war resulted in over 45,000 Palestinian deaths and also widespread destruction. Human rights organizations have condemned Israel's actions as disproportionate and deliberate, targeting civilians. In light of the ICC, since you mentioned the ICC, the International Court of Justice, in light of its arrest warrants, will those be responsible face justice?
Yes, in the long term, they have to face these prosecutions and they have to face these arrest warrants. For the time being, if we take the scale to see why the conscience in the world of the young people, especially of a lot of people around the world, has changed and now are very sensitive and sensible to what happened in Gaza. It's not because they are supporting, for political reasons, the Palestinians. This is
it's for human reasons. It raised their human aspects. Yes, true.
It's because it's hurting the deep feeling of the conscience of humanity, of what we call the civilized nations. And this is what the leaders in Israel are doing now, is again the real interests of Israel. And Israel had the right to exist, and people now around the world are not challenging the existence of Israel, and people are supporting the existence of Israel. But they support the existence of Israel as a state who will behave according to international law. The fact that Israel is not obeying to international law and they are ignoring what are the rules, and they're ignoring the decisions of International Court of Justice, for instance. This is another breach of international law, which make the first breach worse. And also the other point is that the country that they are supporting, Israel, in uh, in in escaping from sanctions of the international justice is also a breach of international law. And here, all these countries, like the United States, like the European countries,
Yes, I get your point, sir. Unfortunately, our time is up, but I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Majid Boudin, international law expert, for your detailed legal and diplomatic insights. Thank you so much, sir. As the curtains are drawn on 2024, Israel finds itself in an existential crisis. A nation once touted as a regional powerhouse is now mired in internal chaos and facing global condemnation. Netanyahu's far-right coalition has fueled political instability and societal division, while the Gaza war has etched an indelible stain on Israel's moral and political record, if we may say. The aggressive expansion of illegal settlements signals a dangerous trajectory towards perpetual conflict and potential isolation. The year ahead will be decisive. Israel must confront its internal fractures and also re-evaluate its path on the world stage. This marks the conclusion of today's special coverage on Q News. Throughout the day, we have been reflecting on the defining moments of 2024, examining the fierce U.S. elections that shaped the global stage, the ongoing crises in Lebanon and Gaza, the turbulent developments in Syria, and Israel's escalating internal and external conflicts. Our special coverage continues tomorrow as we delve deeper into the events that shape this transformative year and their implications for the future. Thank you very much for staying with us. On behalf of the entire Q News team, good night. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi. We'll see you tomorrow.